a whole lot of different issues there, which are, which then becomes for me a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
If you go back,
I'm just saying, like, from what I understand is, like, responsibility is the key deciding factor on how they make certain, like, rulings and stuff like that. For example, if I impregnate somebody now, I'm fully responsible for that, but I've been removed any like tangible power in that situation if I'm not of a certain sex.
Let's go back before that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking in my head. I'm not going to take you back and make you tell me whether you believe in God or not.
Yeah.
We're going to go to. Let's go. Is there? It's. So, do people have rights? Do things like? Do people have rights? Yeah. What are rights?
Yeah. That's
and what
a
do
good
they look
question.
like? And how do you ensure a right? And how do you? So people talk. I don't believe in rights. I think the whole idea of human rights is a complete and utter anathema, and that it creates more trouble than it's worth.
Okay.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't be treated kindly and with dignity and respect at every opportunity, because yes, that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
But I think that saying it's my human right, you're then left with, and then what?
Human right for what? Yeah.
So it's my now, but a big part of my life is the Convention on the Rights of the Disabled Person, which was ratified by Australia 20 years or so ago, and that's been really helpful in some ways, but it still gets down to an argument of we signed the CRPD and people look at you and go, yep, and they go, well, you can't do what you're doing, and they go, yep, we can. There is nothing to stop us. If it's
what's the CRPD for?
It's Convention on the Rights of the Disabled Person.
Okay.
So it's a United Nations convention that Australia was a signatory to 20 years ago.
Yeah.
In my work with people with a disability, it's really important.
Yeah.
And it has established some baseline ways of engaging with people with a disability and
what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, kind of thing.
And
guidelines.
So when I started off doing this 30 years ago, extreme brutality and like really fucked up stuff was
normal,
was common.
Commonplace.
It was just so. Part of it was just so brutal.
Yeah.
And it was a weekly thing that I get confronted with, gross brutality and that kind of. In some ways, I was young and stupid, and I liked hitting people. So it was a space in which I could move with a bit of what I thought was legitimacy. But so if you've got, so the whole notion of, and this is in philosophy, it's a big drama is, like I'm going to go with a virtues based. There's a whole school of philosophy. And look, I'm not a philosopher. I'm an enthusiastic amateur.
Yeah.
With all of the likelihood of messing that up that comes with that, but I just don't know that the notion of human rights has pushed some things a long way, but ultimately it's law. Now, if the laws are enacted in the name of human rights, that's okay, but it still wasn't necessarily a real thing.
Yeah.
We treat people equally because the law says we have to, and because we get fined or we go to jail if we don't.
Yeah.
Not because of some inherent right that people have. Yeah. The Americans are really big on human rights.
Yeah.
But I think they're a failed state and a failed experiment in the individual rights, and I just don't think a lot of their stuff particularly makes sense anymore.
Yeah.
So if we start with that and we go, okay, well, we've got to have laws. Well, if you're going to have laws, you got to have access to the laws. So if you're a woman, and you don't have the right to vote, you don't have access to the laws.
Yeah.
So up until 1822 in South Australia and about the same time in New Zealand, women in Western countries didn't have the ability to vote.
Yeah.
So they have no ability to affect lawmaking, because that's how we, in our society, you know, we agreed that as a society.
Yeah.
Back in back when, that we were going to have a society where we voted, and because in societies you got all these tensions,
Yeah.
and all these decision making. You know, the rich and the poor,
Yeah.
the king, parliament, the courts, the state, all of those things, and as the Americans found with Donald Trump, you got to have some tension between all of those things, so that when one of them goes out of shape, the rest of it sort of pulls it back.